Good afternoon, everyone. In today's video, we're going to cover 5 different things. The first is going to be revisiting the trade in NVIDIA. This is a trade we set up last Friday based off of a bullish slingshot squeeze. Today, we had the backtester give us an exact entry price, which we can use to add to this table for those who are following along. I'll also do a quick recap of the reasons why I like this trade in NVIDIA in this section. Then in 2 through 5 here, we're going to repeat the same process, but this time off of the weekly time frame scan. So in step 2, we'll use the slingshot squeeze scan, point that towards the weekly time frame, and scan for all weeks that ended last week. So anything as of last week that gave us a bullish slingshot squeeze. Then once we have that list, we're going to plug that in and actually analyze the weekly time frame charts. The way we'll analyze this is using the new slingshot squeeze backtester. All of our volatility box members, you should already have access to this, the scans, along with the indicator in modules 10, 11, and 12 of the squeeze course. And then in a future module, I'm also going to be showing you how we can add in some things like these labels, along with polishing up the code and combining all of the indicators, trying to make it a bit more streamlined. Anyways, once we finish step 3, we're going to take the list of stocks that we finally like and actually make sure that we have them right here on this table, which we can use all of these symbols then to plug into step 5 for all of our stock volatility box members, the new My Watchlist column. This way you can automate the entire section of getting alerts anytime we breach a volatility box edge, and you have a very smart list in which you already have a bullish bias. Anytime we have, say, an aggressive or a conservative long, it gives you an opportunity to participate in those trades for having done this research this one time. All right, so let's get started first with the trade in NVIDIA. I have a daily time frame chart, and here it's currently set to 1 year daily. Let's use this and actually change this to something like 5 years instead. So we have more data for the back tester down here. And then I'll zoom into the setup so we can get a better look at it. Now, this appeared on our scan on Friday. That's this candle right here. We'll see we had the slingshot squeeze. That's this yellow arrow. You'll notice today the report is actually giving you that pink arrow, which suggests that it actually does have an entry point now for the trade, meaning according to the backtester, this trade is now live as well. Now, things that I like about NVIDIA, first off, we have this bullish slingshot squeeze, which today looks like it's now starting to go into that slowest compression, which I think makes for a fairly interesting move. Then if we zoom out here on this chart, take a look. You see an overall bullish market pulse line, which briefly here went bearish, but now as of today has gone bullish as well one more time. You'll see that with this green right down here. So that's reason number 2 why we're now officially in a stage of acceleration. I imagine we would start to have at least the legs under NVIDIA, give it a nice move up higher. And then finally, if we use the statistics right here, you'll see there's 7 winners and 1 loser over the past 5 years using this setup in NVIDIA. So that's where each trade here, including the loser, averages out to 4.47%. We also did the math on this in Friday's video. Took us to somewhere right around 574, which was that target we were looking at. I also think the underlying here makes a whole lot of sense if you didn't want to mess around with any of the options pricing inefficiencies. Now, for all of our volatility box members, you can also gain these statistics in a bit more detail. If we right click and say show report, you'll see 8 trades in total. This was the one loser in 2018. Was a fairly nasty loser, but then you compare it to some of the more recent winners, which I think should help to keep things in a bit more perspective. So now, for our tracking purposes, 542.33 is the entry that we used in NVIDIA. So I can go ahead and come into this table right here. I'll say in NVDA time frame daily. We said the entry price was 542.33. And then the entry date that it has, we'll just mark it as today, and then we'll mark the average trade percentage as 4.47. Now, let's go ahead and repeat the same process for the weekly time frame. So I'll come into the scan tab. I already have the scan results loaded in here, but what I've changed is the time frame here from daily to weekly, and then I've also made sure we're going back 1 bar previously so I can see everything that triggered as of the previous week's candle. Now here we have 13 results. This 5 right here I think is a pretty cool feature which one of our members pointed out to me today. Shout out to you, Bob, if you're watching. But that's where you can add this as something as part of the cog icon right here and customize. You can search for send to, and you can directly send these symbols to your chart. So for example, I could say send ADUS to my chart, click that, and that's where it's on my chart. I thought that was fairly neat. We can save all of these as a watch list since we're going to go through all 13, but in case in the future you have just 1 or 2 that you want to look at, I thought that was a pretty cool feature. So thanks, Bob, for pointing that out. 12.7, I'll save this list. Now let me load that in right here. And let's go through this using the same process. So the back tester will give it enough data. So let me switch this to weekly. I'll change this from 3 years to something like, say, 10 years. And then we have all of the stocks here. Now, to go through this list, we want to make sure of a couple different things. One, we want to make sure the report has actually taken a trade. We should see it plotted at least today if that weekly trade off of last week was good, purely because this is now the next week's candle. And so we should see it because it uses the previous week's close. So that's step one. Step two, once we do have those results, we'll use these labels to go through this fairly quickly. Or you can also just take a look at this report right down here. If we see red, that's a bad sign, skip that stock. If you see green, that's a good sign, and we can continue to dive a bit deeper. Now, if you see green where you had a histogram which was much higher and then you came much lower, that typically suggests that you had a loser somewhere in there, even if the histogram is overall green. So those are the ones we want to be a bit more careful of, and then these labels up here will make it fairly easy. Now, keep in mind off of a weekly time frame here, you won't necessarily see as many trade triggers as we saw off of a daily time frame. So here, I'd like to just make sure we have a decent enough winning ratio. So 2 versus 1 here might be interesting, but let's also take a look at all of these candidates. And we'll also use this percentage to get an idea of, are we positive or negative, and ignore all of the negative ones. Let's just make that a rule. All right, so using that as the process, let's start off with SRPT. For SRPT here, we see we did in fact have the signal last week. We have an opportunity to enter at a better price today. The price that we're using for tracking is 158.13. Current price is 151.05. The same strategy off of a 10-year chart, 3 winners, 0 losers. Average trade has been good for 17.89%, and we're still fairly close to the market pulse line. Now, the market pulse here did go red for just a little bit, so I think that's the one little cautionary sign. But otherwise, this squeeze, we'd be looking for the squeeze to fire long. Now, one thing that I think might be interesting to test out here is, see this number is 15, I think it should be, if we show report, 200261 right now. If we come into this backtester and change it from no squeeze as our exit to something like, say, losing momentum, see if we can actually ride the coattails a bit more. All right, that's not a good idea. So getting out when the squeeze actually fires seems to be the better idea if you were interested in this trade in SRPT. So let's go ahead and add that. So we'll say SRPT weekly. I think the price we said was 158.13. Entry date we'll use as today as well, 12/7. And then our trade percentage here, 17.89%. And then maybe we can add in something like notes and say, get out when squeeze fires. All right, now let's move on to the next stock in our list. That's DocuSign here. DocuSign, we see we have only one other time that this was true. 1 winner, 0 losers, and that one winner gave us an 18.51% gain. So I'll add that to the list here, but we should keep that in mind that we had only one winner. So let me add Docu here, weekly. Let's see what the entry price is for tracking purposes. 243.22. 12/7 one more time. And then here the average percentage we see is 18.51. Okay, let me make sure that this is set to percentage as well. And then we can change this to 0.1851. And let's expand this. All right, cool. Oh, and the one note we said we wanted to add to DocuSign was only one previous trade. All right, now FBT, we take a look. 2 winners, 0 losers, 6.68%. We have 2 slingshot squeezes here, so this trade is actually triggered a while back. We take a look at that tracking price, 162.86. Current price is 162.36. So again, you have an opportunity to enter at a better price. Keep in mind again, though, this is a longer time frame trade, and so for those that don't necessarily care to hold this for weeks at a time, you can use this list to try and find bullish triggers and essentially have an overall longer term bias in which you're then looking to try and play smaller moves, which is what we're going to do with the volatility box. So FBT here, same thing, 12/7, and then we'll say 2 winners, 1 loser, so 6.68%. And then the entry price here was 162.86. Now coming down, we'll go to New York Times here. New York Times has already hit the 1272, the most recent 1272. We already do have this signal. To me, this looks a bit more extended, especially if you had to choose a handful from this list. I'm not sure New York Times would be one of the trades that wins, but here, we'll come to this at the end, 8.58%. Again, we see 12/7, and then if we take a look at what the entry price is, that's 47.27, in which our current price is still below that. Now, in the case of New York Times here, I think I would be a much happier buyer if we got to pull back to the market pulse. Same with almost all of these. So despite having, say, an entry price here that might be less than what the current stock price is, or greater than, excuse me, what the current stock price is, I think I would still be looking for a pullback to the market pulse for the best stocks. And I think that pullback overlapping with whenever it appears on our watch list and we get that alert notification is the most ideal setup here. Now we keep coming down. The next one we have is Johnson & Johnson. So we take a look at what Johnson & Johnson looks like. One trade only, 150.27. That's also 12.7. The average trade there only 3.11%. It's not all that interesting, right? So only one previous trade only gives you right around 3%. It may not be necessarily one that you care to take a look at in terms of holding for that period, but still nice to know you have a bullish bias there. Now we keep coming down. UNFI, red, we can just skip this. ARE, 2 winners, 0 losers, so let's just add that. And we'll say that's 7.08%. 2 winners, weekly, is at 12.7 as well. And then I'll grab the most recent price here, which is 170.94. Now FDS, 2 winners, 6.89%. So we can add that as well. But you're getting this idea that there's quite a few of these. And so now we're just creating a list of stocks that we can plug in, which starts to make this process a lot faster for the future. And so we grab this price, 351.01. Fairly expensive, 12.7. All right, now AXSM, only one trade here. That was a 42% winner. We're seeing that same signal happen one more time. It is a therapeutics company. So we do have AXSM here, but that's also only one trade. And it's a therapeutics company. So we'll keep that in mind. Weekly, 42.23, 12. Actually, and this trade triggered quite a while back too, right? So if we take a look at this, this trade triggered on May 4th, 2020 at a price of 90.13. So that's still valid. And then this was May 4th. And then here we'll say only one previous trade. Okay, now coming back down, ADUS, red, we can skip that. Skyworks, same thing, red, we can go ahead and skip that. LITE looks interesting right down here, 3 winners, 0 losers, 12.78%. However, if we do take a look at LITE right here, you'll see that the backtester gave us that entry also in May at a price of 81.21, and we're already a bit of a ways away from it. So I may add this as just a fun one to track, but in terms of getting an entry, I think you'd be looking for an opportunity closer to 81.21. And we have that on, again, May 11th. Average trade gives you about 12.78%. Bias only, well above entry. All right, and then Appfolio, 2 winners, 0 losers, average winners 18.89%. That looks like a really nice setup, actually. I really like this one in Appfolio. We have the squeeze signal. Now we have the slingshot signal. We are near the previous high here. The weekly time frame looks like we pulled back to the market pulse and we're now starting to go. This looks fairly interesting. So we'll say Appfolio as well, APPF, weekly, and then the trade date, I believe here, was also November 9th. So 11.9, and the price there was 163.87. And so if we get a bit of a pullback in Appfolio, which this one would be a really ideal one if we got it from our stock volatility box trigger, I think that would be very, very interesting. So these are going to be the stocks that I plug in to my watch list here. So now let me just make all of these commas separated. So I'll say A1 and comma. Actually, this should be A2. And then let me apply this to all the symbols that we have. And I'll copy and paste this entire list and just paste it into our new alerts page here. And now that we've added this to our watch list, we'll get a notification anytime we have price action breach either side's volatility box entry lines. Particularly for all of these stocks, we're looking at longs, either aggressive or conservative longs, but anytime you get that notification, then you know that these are stocks in which you have a good amount of weekly confidence here around at least say the weekly time frame. There's a reason for you to be bullish, and you're getting an opportunity to enter at the edge with an edge with a long entry position using say either the actual underlying to avoid options discrepancies, or you can use options for some of these stocks that actually do have fairly liquid options, things like say NVIDIA. I hope this video helps to give you an idea of how in just about 15 minutes or so, you can build and go through an entire weekly time frame scan watch list, use a backtester that you've built yourself, and really get an idea of which stocks you'd like to focus on and outsource that list to the Stock Volatility Box platform. All right, hope this video helps. Good luck trading everyone, and we'll see you in the next update.